And we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Matchday 4 of the Europa League, the second of our 3 European videos for the week. So as always, we'll start off with a quick reminder that if you missed yesterday's video covering the Champions League matches that will be taking place both tonight and tomorrow, you can check that video out at the top of your screen right now. And of course, that also means that tomorrow morning we have got all of the previews and predictions for the Europa Conference League, and you guys still have 24 hours to head over to the community page where you can have your say on all of those 18 matches in the Conference League, because in today's video we'll be showing you all the community predictions for these 18 matches as well. All that is left to say before we get into today's video is, as always, if you enjoy all of these preview and predictions videos, please let me know by dropping a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here so you don't miss out on any of the content we've got coming up for you this week. Get those notifications turned on as well. As we've already mentioned, Conference League tomorrow, and then once again on Friday we'll have Premier League and La Liga before we head off to yet another international break. As for today though, let's get straight into the fixtures. We have got 9 games kicking off early and then 9 games kicking off late, so we'll do all of the early kickoffs first. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it, going through them alphabetically, and the first of those sees Basel taking on FCSB. It has been quite a poor start for both of these sides so far, both having 1 win and 2 losses, both losing on match day 3. For Basel, it was a 2-0 defeat at Lyon. For FC, it was a 2-1 home defeat to Bologna. However, since then, it's been 3 wins out of 3 back in Romania for the former Steaua Bucharest. For Basel, they were hammered 5-1 by Europa Conference League side Lausanne. However, to be fair to them, they were able to bounce back with a 0-0 draw away to fellow Europa League side Young Boys this weekend. And that little bit of information, that draw with Young Boys, might actually be the most crucial piece of information going into this prediction, because FCSB has already played Young Boys in this Europa League this season. That was on match day 1, and on that day, FC lost 2-0 at home to Young Boys. So coming into this, Basel drawing away to Young Boys, you would have to fancy them as the favourites coming into this at home to FC. In terms of the team news, the only real team news I can give you is that for Basel, Tsunemoto, who has been out of action since match day 1, remains injured for them, and Ejuma remains out for FCSB. Finally, there is a head-to-head record between these two sides. However, it's quite an irrelevant one because these two actually haven't met since 2013, where both matches between them were in the Champions League and both ended up finishing 1-1. To be fair, it wouldn't surprise me to see a draw in this match, but as I've mentioned, I think Basel should be considered the favourites for this match, and I do fancy them to get the victory here. I'm starting today's video with a 3-1 win to the Swiss side. Speaking of victories, that is exactly what Celta Vigo have been doing recently. Their long run of 1-1 draws is finally in the rearview mirror, as they're now on a 4-match winning streak, which includes winning against Nice on match day 3 in the Europa League. They're now going to be facing Dinamo Zagreb, who went into match day 3 at top spot in the table, and they were taking on bottom place in the table Malmo. However, they could only manage a 1-1 draw in that match, and they followed that up by losing to Croatia's bottom side, Vukovar, the weekend after. So it's not been a great little run for Dinamo. They've now lost their top spot in the Croatian League as well, although to be fair, they did beat defending champions Rijeka this weekend, so there is some momentum for them coming into this match. In terms of the team news, Dinamo do have a couple of defensive injuries with both Valanic and Theophil Keterin out, and also one of their key signings this summer, Ben Arce, who's been very good for them, was signed after the deadline of registration, so he cannot play in the Europa League as things stand. For Celta Vigo, there is some concern over their goalkeeper, Radu, who did pick up a finger injury this weekend. However, reports suggest he could still play in this match. If not, he should be back for the weekend's La Liga fixture. More on that when we get to that video on Friday morning. To be honest, I do think this will be a very close game, and Dinamo do have a very, very good home record so far this season. But I just can't overlook how good Celta Vigo have looked over the course of the last few weeks. The irony is, I do think a 1-1 draw is quite a likely result for this fixture. But I'm breaking the trend. I did it at the weekend. I said Celta Vigo would win. They did that, and I'm backing Celta Vigo to win again here. I'm going for a 2-1 win to the Spanish side. Next up, it is our league leaders in Midtjylland, who are themselves on a 11-game unbeaten run coming into this fixture, winning 9, including all 3 of their Europa League matches so far. They now face a Celtic side who, under the new management of Martin O'Neill, look to build on what was a 2-1 victory for them against Sturm Graz on Matchday 3, and they did beat Rangers in the Scottish Cup this weekend on Sunday. That being said, that Scottish Cup game went to extra time, so there could be some tired legs in some of those Celtic players. However, they won't be as tired as the Midtjylland players because where most other countries across Europe tend to put games on a Friday night or on a Saturday for these Europa teams, or these, well, maybe not a Friday night, but they tend to put the matches on at a time that makes it more suitable for the size of them play in Europe. Midtjylland were forced to play last night in a top-of-the-table clash, which they ended up drawing 1-1 with AGF. So, decent result for them, maintain their unbeaten run, but they're certainly coming into this as the only side that played on Monday night this week. In terms of the team news, there is actually no fresh concerns for them. They made it through that game against AGF last night completely unscathed. For Celtic, Iheanacho is the one major doubt for them coming into this. These two also have a pretty recent head-to-head record. They played back in 2021. That was in Champions League qualifying, and it was Midtjylland that got the edge over the two legs. A 2-1 win was enough for them to secure victory on the night on this ground and see them progress in that year. Personally, I would have them as favourites to win this one as well. They've been absolutely outstanding over recent weeks. Yes, Celtic have been better since O'Neill took over, but I'm yet to be convinced they're back to the sort of level we've seen from Celtic in Europe over recent seasons. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to FC Midtjylland. Next up, we are off to the Netherlands, where we have Utrecht taking on Porto. For Utrecht, it's been an absolutely woeful start. 3 games, 3 losses, 0 goals scored for them so far. Although bizarrely, and I guess you can kind of say to their credit, they've actually only conceded 4. Even though they've lost all 3 matches, they've only conceded 4 goals in those 3 matches. For Porto, their great start to the season took a bit of a hit when they lost on match day 3 to Nottingham Forest in Sean Dyche's first game in charge. But to their credit, they've bounced back with back-to-back victories since, including beating fellow Europa League side Braga this weekend. More on them later. For Utrecht, they did manage to get a win this weekend, but that was off the back of a 4-1 hammering by Europa Conference League side AZ Alkmaar following that 3rd defeat out of 3 in the Europa League. In terms of team news, no fresh concerns for the host side coming into this. For Porto, they look like they're still going to be without Dutch player Luuk de Jong on their trip to the Netherlands for this match. Although I don't think it's impossible that Utrecht can get something from this match, I do think it's unlikely given the current form of these two sides at the moment. I'm going for a relatively comfortable Porto win, and I'm going for 2-0 to the Portuguese. Next up, we are off to Belgrade, where Zvezda will be hosting Lille. Both sides on the receiving end of defeats on match day 3. For Zvezda, they lost 2-0 away to Braga, meaning it's just 1 point from their opening 3 matches in this competition. For Lille, it was one of the shock results of the match day as they lost 4-3 at home to PAOK. So it does throw some question marks over them coming into this match. That being said, for the home side, they're actually on a run of 4 games without a win, backing up their matchday 3 defeat with 2 draws and another loss. For Lille, they've won both of their matches at home since matchday 3, but did lose 2-0 away to fellow Europa League side Nice. More on them very shortly as well. In terms of the team news coming into this, no fresh concerns for Zvezda, but for Lille, it looks like Ngoy is going to be out after missing their game at the weekend. Purely based on status, you would probably say that Lille would have to be the slight favourites coming into this one, and certainly the recent form would back that up. Yes, they've had a couple of defeats, but they're not on a run as poor as Ferencvaros at the moment coming into this. I don't think a draw is out of the question. I even don't think a home win is out of the question, but I still think player for player, Lille should be the side that come out on top in this one. I'm going to go for 2-1, but by all means, I am not 100% confident about that result. Next up, it is Malmo taking on Panathinaikos. As we've already mentioned, Malmo picked up their first point in the Europa League when they drew to top of the table at the time, Dinamo Zagreb, on match day 3. However, that has not been able to improve their form domestically, as they then lost at home to Maccabi before drawing this weekend to Conference League side Harken. For Panathinaikos, it was defeat on match day 3 to Feyenoord, and they have lost back-to-back games in this competition. However, since then, they have won 2 of their 3 games since, so they are the side on slightly better form coming into this match. In terms of the team news, Gudjonsson remains suspended for Malmo following his red card on match day 2. For Panathinaikos, they have multiple injury concerns coming into this, with the likes of Bakasetas, Pellistri, Calabria, Renato Sanchez, and more coming into this. So it could mean that Malmo have more of a chance of getting a result here. If I had to pick a favourite, I probably would still go for the Greek side, because I still think even with those injuries, they are on paper a slightly better side, but I cannot overlook the result that Malmo got on match day 3, and I do think if they get their defensive positions right in this one, they can produce a very similar result here. So Panathinaikos as favourites for me, but I'm going for back-to-back draws for the home side, and I'm going for a 1-1 in this fixture. Now for a clash between 2 of the sides in the top 5 major leagues, as we have Nice from France taking on Freiburg from Germany, where coming into this, you've got to ask the question of why is it that Nice can't produce on a European night when over recent weeks they've been performing so well in France. It's been 3 defeats out of 3 for Nice so far in this competition, 0 points accumulated, but in their last few Ligue 1 games, they've been producing really good results left, right and centre. They've had 3 wins in their last 4, and they only lost this weekend to champions and Champions League winners Paris Saint-Germain due to a 94th minute winner. So Nice are playing some fantastic stuff domestically at the moment, but they just can't produce the results in Europe. For Freiburg, it's been an unbeaten start in their European campaign, beating Utrecht last time out. And incredibly, this is going to be their 4th away fixture in a row following 3 domestic away matches over recent weeks. It's been 1 win, 1 draw and 1 loss for them, including a 0-0 draw with Union Berlin this weekend. What I would say is that the team news is not looking good for the home side coming into this fixture. Klaus is out, Dante is out, and most crucially, their key man so far this season, Diop, got injured against PSG and is expected to be out until after the international break. They also have a fair few other injuries in their squad as well, but none sort of as high profile as those 3. For Freiburg, they're not without problems as well, as they have both Dinsky and Osterhager both out for them coming into this one. I really want to give Nice the win here, because I do think that form in France should be reflected at some point in Europe. However, I just can't overlook the fact that they haven't secured a single point so far in European competition. And given that Freiburg are on a sort of decent run domestically and in Europe, I still think they're going to get something from this match. Personally, I don't think there is a clear favourite right now. So as you know, when that is the case, I only go for one result, and that is a draw, and I'm going for a 2-2 between Nice and Freiburg. It'll be interesting to see how that one ends up going. Penultimate early kickoff sees Salzburg taking on go-ahead Eagles. Salzburg, yet another side who have failed to bring their domestic form into Europe. They are also on 0 points from their opening 3 matches, but they have won 3 games out of 3 back in Austria over the last few weeks. For go-ahead Eagles, it's been the complete opposite, as I bet they wish they could take their European form into their domestic form, because it's been 2 wins and 1 defeat for them so far in this competition, including an incredible victory over Aston Villa on match day 3, but it's only been 1 win in their last 5 in the Eredivisie, and they lost yet again this weekend to NEC. So really not going well for the Dutch side at the moment, but at least they have been putting in some decent performances in Europe. In terms of the team news, again, both sides have a fair few injuries. The sort of marquee one for Salzburg is Bistrup in midfield, and then for Eagles, the only sort of main one I can pull out is Norba, who has not played a single minute since the Aston Villa victory. My head tells me that Salzburg really should be the side that comes out on top here, and I just think that recent form does suggest that they are the side that are going to do it. But again, take that with a pinch of salt, considering how poor they've been in Europe and how good Eagles have been so far in this competition. I'm, though, still going to go for the Austrian side to take the victory, and I'm going to go for a very narrow 2-1 win to Salzburg, which means our final early kickoff is another trip to Austria, as we have Sturm Graz taking on Nottingham Forest here. For the home side, it's been 2 defeats away from home over the last couple of game weeks, with the most recent one being a defeat to Celtic. However, they did win their only home match in this competition so far. For Nottingham Forest, it's 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, but that most recent performance in this competition was that crucial 2-0 home win over Porto at the City Ground on match day 3. Since match day 3, it's not gone well for Sturm, as they failed to win any of their 3 matches back in Austria, losing 2 and drawing 1. One of those defeats was to Conference League side Rapid Vienna. More on them in tomorrow's video. For Nottingham Forest, it's been just the 2 matches, a defeat away at Bournemouth before drawing at home to Manchester United 2-2 this weekend. In terms of the team news, there's going to be one man missing for Sturm, and that is Chukwani. He was sent off in their defeat to Celtic last time out. For Forest, Igor Jesus is going to be suspended following 3 yellow cards in the opening 3 matches. So when you combine that with the fact that Chris Wood is also out injured, they are a little bit light on forwards, although they do still have the likes of Awani and Colin Wendo, who was signed in the summer. However, they also are set to be without Douglas Luiz, who appeared to pull his hamstring against Manchester United as well. Personally, I think that Nottingham Forest should still be considered the favourites for this match. They've definitely looked a little bit better under Sean Dyche. However, I'm still not convinced by them away from home so far this season, both in Europe and in the Premier League. No head-to-head record between these 2 sides as things stand. Both of these sides have actually lost to Midtjylland so far in this competition, so maybe you can try and read into the performances against them, respectively. Personally, I think Forest should be considered the favourites, though, and I am just going to go for the English side here. I'm going for 2-1 to Nottingham Forest. That rounds off all of the early kickoffs in the Europa League this week. So before we move on to the later ones, let's have a quick roundup of what you guys have been saying for these fixtures. The majority have gone for Basel against FC, but it's not quite convincing. Same with the second game. Most of you going for Celta Vigo, but again, it's very, very close. Majority have gone for Midtjylland to beat Celtic. Most of you, if not all of you, think Porto are going to beat Utrecht. Most of you think Lille are going to beat Ferencvaros. Again, close between Malmo and Panathinaikos, with Panathinaikos just edging it. Very close between Nice and Freiburg, with Freiburg just edging it. A draw being the most popular pick between Salzburg and go-ahead Eagles, and then the majority of you going for Nottingham Forest. Again, a quick reminder that you can still head over to our community page and have your say on the Conference League predictions ahead of tomorrow's video. But now it is time to move on to the later kickoffs in the Europa League, and let's get things started back in England for Aston Villa versus Maccabi Tel Aviv, where it really has been a bizarre couple of weeks for the home side in Aston Villa. Unbelievably, their unbeaten run came crashing down with that defeat to go-ahead Eagles on match day 3. However, they would then put in a perfect performance to see off Manchester City back at Villa Park in the Premier League, before then backing that up with what was a really poor and very sloppy performance away at Anfield to champions Liverpool at this weekend. So I don't really know what we're going to see from Aston Villa coming into this one. For Maccabi, though, it's not been a great start for them in this competition. They were well beaten 3-0 by Midtjylland at last time out. However, they have backed it up with 2 consecutive wins domestically over the course of the last few weeks. As far as I can tell, coming into this one, there are no concerns at all for either side coming into this, fresh or long-term for Maccabi. However, for Aston Villa, they're going to be without a couple of players. Emi Buendia and Yuri Tillemans remain out for them. To be honest with you, this really should be an Aston Villa victory. I don't see any reason why Maccabi would be able to go there and get a result. I do think that Unai Emery is going to make changes for this fixture. He has done in Europe already, potentially to their detriment in that defeat to go-ahead Eagles on match day 3. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's an absolute guarantee that Villa win this match, but I think it would be a real surprise, especially at home, if they didn't get the result here. So I'm starting the late kickoffs with a 3-0 win to Aston Villa. Next up, it is a battle of the bees as Bologna take on Brann in our second match. For Bologna, it's been 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss for them so far. However, that run has gone in reverse order, losing on the opening day, drawing on match day 2, and then winning on match day 3. And those match day 2 and 3 results have all culminated in what is now an 8-game unbeaten run for the Italian side, where they won yet again this weekend away to Parma. For Brann, it's been a very, very strong start in this competition. Back-to-back wins for them at home, but they did lose their only away fixture so far. Their most recent result, a victory over Rangers on match day 3. However, it's not gone well for them back in Norway over the last couple of weeks, as they've lost their last 2 in a row, including at home to Champions League side Bodo Glimt this weekend. Realistically, I think the Italian side are the only ones that should be coming out on top in this fixture. In terms of the team news, they only have one major absentee, and that is Ciro Immobile, who has been out for a very, very long while. For Brann, they're going to be without Torsvik and Meyer, as they remain out with injuries sustained in previous match days. Personally, though, I just think this is going to be a Bologna victory. I don't think it's out of the question that the Norwegian side could get something here. But I'm going for Bologna's unbeaten run to continue here with yet another victory. I'm going for 3-1 to Bologna. Brann are always good for a goal. You look at their record recently, it's been a while since they failed to score in a match. The same cannot be said coming into the Braga and Genk game, because we have two sides here that have very good defensive records coming into this competition so far. So much so that after 3 match days, between these two sides, only 1 goal has been scored against them, and that went against Ghent. Coming into this, Braga have 3 games, 3 wins, 5 goals, 0 conceded. Weirdly, that's not the last time you're going to hear that combination of stats, and I'll tell you when later on. For Ghent, it has been a 1-0 victory against Rangers, a 1-0 loss against Ferencvaros, and a 0-0 draw with Betis. So defence is what's really going to be on the menu coming into this one. For the away side, they're actually on a 6-game unbeaten run coming into this, winning back-to-back matches on the road to this fixture. For Braga, they were on a 4-game winning streak without conceding a single goal. However, they did lose this weekend to fellow Europa League side Porto, as we mentioned earlier on in this video. In terms of the team news for this match, there are no fresh concerns for the Portuguese side coming into this. However, for Genk, they are going to be without Ito, who still hasn't featured since the last international break, and Alouadi, who hasn't played since the Ferencvaros defeat in this competition. Unsurprisingly, I do have the Portuguese side as the favourites to take this match, but I would just really, really warn about the potential of a 0-0 draw in this fixture. I've said it multiple times throughout this mini preview. Both of these sides very, very good at defending, and it would not surprise me to see this one end in a 0-0 draw. But I think Braga will just about edge it out in the end, so I'm going for a 1-0 victory to the Portuguese side, which will make it 4 wins out of 4 with no goals conceded. Next up, we're off to Hungary as we have Ferencvaros taking on Ludogorets. Ferencvaros, another side unbeaten so far in this competition, and have also won on both match day 2 and match day 3, beating Salzburg and Genk along the way. They now face a Ludogorets side who have lost both of their most recent matches on match day 2 and match day 3 to Real Betis and Young Boys respectively. So early signals coming in to this one suggest that it is going to be the home side that should be considered favourites for this match. Since match day 3, it's been 1 loss and 1 win for Ferencvaros. For Ludogorets, there's been some crazy results. They've had a 5-4 defeat and a 3-2 victory before then drawing 0-0. So who knows what we're going to get from Ludogorets coming into this game. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for Ferencvaros, but Kurtulus is going to be out for Ludogorets, having not been seen since their defeat to Real Betis on match day 3. Now for what is possibly the spiciest head-to-head record we have had so far in any match so far this season. These two sides have already played each other in Europe this season, because they were in Champions League qualifying against each other. Now, obviously, both of them ended up losing because they both ended up in this competition. However, who came out on top when these two sides met each other? Well, what I can tell you is at Ludogorets, it was a draw, but then here on this ground, Ferencvaros got a 3-0 victory. So, for me, that is the clear favourite coming into this. Ludogorets are absolutely going to be going out for revenge, though. And although it was a 3-0 win for Ferencvaros that night, if you look at their defensive record over recent weeks, I do think you could see Ludogorets squeezing one in the other end. Still going to go for that Hungarian win, though, and I'm going for a 3-1 win to Ferencvaros. Next up, we have PAOK and Young Boys, and for PAOK, they're on an incredible 6-game win streak, which includes that brilliant 4-3 win away to Lille last time out. That, however, was only their first win in this competition, and they'll be facing a young boys side who themselves are on a 4-game unbeaten run coming into this one, winning both on Matchday 2 and Matchday 3, with their most recent victory being the win over Ludogorets that we just spoke about a moment ago. However, they have only been able to draw their last 2 most recent matches. Most recently of all, that draw with Basel that we spoke about at the start of the video. So, in my opinion, I think PAOK should be considered the slight favourites, and I mean very slight favourites coming into this one. In terms of the team news, there is definitely going to be one player out for PAOK, as Kedziora was sent off in their victory against Lille. However, they could also be without former Liverpool man Dejan Lovren, who missed their game at the weekend through illness. No fresh concerns for the Swiss side at all coming into this fixture. There's also no head-to-head record between these two sides, so basically we're just going on the information that I've already given. My only sort of genuine prediction for this match is goals. Both of these sides have been involved in very high-scoring matches over the course of the last 3 weeks, and I do think that either side could come out on top. However, I do think it is the Greek side that are going to take it come the full-time whistle. I'm going to go for a 3-2 victory to PAOK. Wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being 3-2 or 4-3 the other way either, though. I expect that one to be very, very entertaining. Nothing entertaining to say about Rangers coming into their match against Roma, other than the fact that I do enjoy seeing them getting hammered every single week as a Scottish team. For them, it's 3 defeats from 3, and they have the worst goal difference of the sides that have secured 0 points so far in this competition, so that is why they are bottom of the table. They lost 3-0 to Brann last time out. However, it should be noted that their performances have improved ever so slightly since Russell Martin left his job. However, it was yet another defeat for them this weekend in that Scottish Cup semi-final to Celtic, although again, granted, that game did go to extra time. Still, not the best preparation going into a game against Roma. That being said, Roma have actually lost both of their last 2 matches in this competition, losing on both Matchday 2 and Matchday 3. The second of those, a real shock defeat to Victoria Pilsen. Probably, if not the shock of the round, although you'd probably put the PAOK result against Lille on a sort of same level as that will get to Pilsen in our final prediction of today's video. Since then, they have had 2 wins before then losing again this weekend to AC Milan. So neither of these teams on particularly great form or momentum coming into this one. In terms of the team news, for Rangers, they are still going to be without Matondo. He is their only major absentee. For Roma, there are some doubts over both Angelino and Evan Ferguson, but other than that, they're in a pretty good spot at the moment. The irony is, I actually think Rangers could actually get a result here. This is by far their toughest fixture, in my opinion, but it is the sort of game where, at home, in a nighttime game, the Rangers do tend to produce those sort of results. However, I do think that Roma will obviously be considered the overwhelming favourites for this match, and with the quality of the players they still have available to them, it would still be a surprise if they didn't end up winning it. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to Roma, but after what we've seen from them on Matchday 2 and Matchday 3, who knows, Rangers may very well take it. That then brings us to what I believe is probably the biggest fixture of the entire night, as we have Spanish side Real Betis taking on French side Lyon. Coming into this, Real Betis are unbeaten with 1 win, but also 2 draws, a 0-0 to Genk in their last game. For Lyon, it is 3 games, 3 wins, 5 goals, and 0 conceded. I told you you'd be hearing that stat again. The only reason why they are 3rd and Braga are 2nd is literal alphabetical order. That is how it's being decided at the moment. And also, I do think it'd be very bizarre if they managed to get the exact same result as Braga again coming out of this game, because I think these are 2 very different style of opponents. However, it should, of course, be noted that Real Betis did play Genk in their last game. So, who knows? Maybe there could be something to be said about that. Since Matchday 3, it has been an interesting turn of form for Real Betis. They lost at home to Atletico Madrid before then beating Mallorca 3-0 this weekend. For Lyon, they beat Strasbourg following Matchday 3, but then had back-to-back draws to both Paris FC and then Brest this weekend. So neither of them sort of pitch perfect at the moment in terms of their form, but both sides are going to be feeling relatively confident. In terms of the team news, Real Betis could be struggling in the left-back department as both Junior Firpo and Ricardo Rodriguez seem to now be injured. For Lyon, their highly rated winger Malik Fofana has sustained an injury which will see him out until the new year after getting injured against Strasbourg a couple of weeks ago. No recent head-to-head record between these two sides. However, for the second time in this video, these two sides last met in 2013. Very weird how that sort of happened. For those of you who care, it was a Lyon victory on that occasion, but I mean, we're literally talking 12 years ago. You can't read anything into that at all. Personally, I don't think there is very much to split between these sides at all right now. I think if you were to balance everything that's happened so far this season, I would probably have Real Betis as the slight favourites. So I am just going to go for them. But Lyon have been playing some fantastic stuff, both domestically and in Europe so far this season. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them get at least a point from this match. I, however, am going to go for that slight 2-1 win to Real Betis, though. Our penultimate game of the night sees Stuttgart taking on Feyenoord, two sides who, in my opinion, have been underperforming so far in this competition, and their position in the table certainly reflects that. Both sides on 3 points so far. Stuttgart losing both matches on Matchday 2 and Matchday 3 to Basel and then to Fenerbahce. For Feyenoord, they got their first win of the tournament in Matchday 3, beating Panathinaikos after losing on Matchdays 1 and 2. Since then, it's been a win and a loss for Stuttgart, beating Mainz, but then losing to RB Leipzig this weekend. For Feyenoord, they've still been doing pretty well domestically, but there was a crucial 3-2 defeat to PSV Eindhoven for them a couple of weekends ago before then beating Volendam this weekend. Both teams actually have a fair few injuries coming into this one as well. For Stuttgart, they're going to be without Assignon, Zagadou and Demirovic and more. For Stuttgart, their goalkeeper Bijlo is out, as well as Trauner and Jakob Moder. And yeah, both teams have more players on top of that are out, but for me, those are sort of like the standout ones for me. If you do think there's more crucial players injured, let me know down in the comments. To be honest, again, I don't really think there's a clear favourite here. Both sides are very good on their day, and although you'd always fancy the home side to get the victory in fixtures like this, I personally think Feyenoord are capable of going to Germany and getting at least a point here. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. But again, I would say that it is the Germans that I would expect to come out on top if there was to be a winner. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Victoria Pilsen all the way up in 5th, taking on Fenerbahce, who are in 14th. However, incredibly, there is just 1 point between these two sides coming into this fixture after the first 3 match days. For Pilsen, it has been a draw and 2 victories, including that brilliant win in Rome last time out, which means that they are in a fantastic spot after these opening 3 rounds. Since then, they have won every single game domestically. They've actually won 5 in a row now in all competitions and are unbeaten in their last 7 matches. That, however, is a feat that can almost be matched by Fenerbahce, who themselves are on a 7-game unbeaten run as well. However, they've only won their last 4 matches. So both sides full of momentum and full of confidence coming into this one. For Fenerbahce, their most recent result in this competition was the victory over Stuttgart that we mentioned just moments ago. In terms of the team news, Doski remains out for the home side after his red card against Malmo on Matchday 2, and Mate Vidra is out through injury. No fresh concerns for the Turkish league side whatsoever. Unbelievably, the head-to-head record between these two sides dates back to, you guessed it, 2013. The 3rd time in this video where the most recent head-to-head record has been between two sides that have most recently played in 2013. So yet again, we can't really read into it. But for those of you who do care, it was Fenerbahce who won 2-1 over the course of those 2 legs. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for the Roma result, I probably would back Fenerbahce to get the victory again here. However, Pilsen have just been so good in this competition so far. They've been well deserving of the 7 points they've got so far. And honestly, I daren't go against them in this fixture. Even though I think Fenerbahce should be considered the favourites, I'm going to go for a one last final draw in the final prediction of today's video. And I'm going to go for a 2-2 between Pilsen and Fenerbahce. As always, a massive thank you very much for watching this video. It's been another very, very entertaining one. It's going to be another very interesting night in the Europa League. Before I leave you, let's round up what you guys have been saying on that community page for these remaining fixtures. And you have gone for the following: Basically, everyone thinks Villa are going to beat Maccabi. Basically, everyone thinks Bologna are going to beat Brann. Basically, everyone thinks Braga are going to beat Genk. Majority of you think Ferencvaros are going to beat Ludo. Much closer between PAOK and Young Boys, although only 11% going for a home win, which is what I think is going to happen. 50% going with Young Boys. Majority of you think that Roma are going to beat Rangers. Again, close between Betis and Lyon, with the majority going in favour of the Spanish side. Majority again going with Stuttgart over Feyenoord, but again pretty close between those three. And the majority going for Fenerbahce to beat Victoria Pilsen. Again, that does not surprise me. I do think the Turkish side will be favourites, but I still think Pilsen will get something. All that is left to do then is to put my predictions back up on the screen for you one last time and say once again a massive thank you very much for everyone that has got involved in this video. A final reminder that you still have time to head over to that community page and have your say on the 18 Conference League matches that we'll be covering in tomorrow's video. Before I leave you, don't forget to let me know down in the comments section anything you think I've missed from any of these fixtures, any thoughts you want to have regarding any of these fixtures, and just anything else you want to say down in the comment section below. Let me know how you're doing. As always, a massive thank you very much for watching. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you again same time tomorrow morning for the Europa Conference League Matchday 3 previews and predictions. I'll see you there.